Everybody. Good morning. This is my first professional conference as a librarian. And today, not only am I an attendee, I'm also a presenter. And I would like to thank Nyla for accepting my proposal. And I would like to thank all of the co-sponsors and roundtables that are sponsoring me today. I really appreciate it. I also really appreciate everyone who's made the commitment to wake up this early to attend this broadcast at 8 a.m. Do you have your favorite caffeinated beverage beside you? I know I do. I have my tea, which is a very strong tea, and I will be taking sips of it throughout the presentation for thirst and for dramatic effect. I'm going to turn on my screen share. Please give me a moment. While I turn my screen share, please admire my Brooklyn Public Library t-shirt and my special project at Brooklyn Public Library, the Cycle Alliance. So, my name is Rakisha Kearns-White, and I'm a young adult librarian at the Brooklyn Public Library. I've been a librarian for 15 years. I also, over the past 5 years, have been studying to become a informally trained sex educator. I've taken workshops at Planned Parenthood and through the American Journal of Sexuality Educators. That's actually been the bulk of my pandemic downtime. But my passion for sexuality education did not actually start from me becoming a young adult librarian. It started because I became a mom. Today, I plan to underscore the importance of providing unbiased and sex-positive information to teens using the skill set that us librarians and library workers have. I don't do this just because I'm dedicated to my career. It's because I have 2 teen daughters. And it's important to me that they and every teen who comes to me walks away with the best information possible. And speaking of my 2 teen daughters, here are the humans I am raising. I am passionate about providing unbiased and accurate information about puberty, sex, sexuality, and romantic relationships, because my daughters have access to the internet. Their friends have access to the internet. And now, because of the pandemic, thousands of teens and children across the nation have even more exposure to the internet because of remote learning. And I want to make sure when they're going on the internet to look up their questions about sex and sexuality, their first instinct will be to go to the library's website, check out our resources there. Or if they're able to go to their library in person, go to the library person at the desk and ask for a book about the topic. Now, before we dive into how to be comfortable in providing sexuality education and programs or resources at the library, let's have an icebreaker. If you are alone in your space right now, I would like for you to stand up and say the word penis. Now, to quote my favorite comedian, Kevin Hart, I want you to stand up and say it with your chest. Don't whisper, don't mumble, enunciate. On a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Penis. How did that feel? Hold on to that feeling for a moment. Now, if you're in a room with other people, or if you're at the office, I don't want you to get written up by HR. So in the chat, I want you to type the word penis in all capital letters. You may add emojis or exclamation points if you like. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Penis. How did that make you feel? Did it make you laugh? Did it make you scared? Did it make you feel nervous? Now, imagine the fear and nervousness that a teen has when they come to the desk to ask you for information about sex, reproduction, and sexuality. But we're going to get off the topic of penises for a while. I want you to think about another bodily organ involved in sex. Or let me correct myself. I want you to think of a body part involved in sex, because as we all know, penises don't always have to be involved. I don't want you to say it out loud. I don't want you to type it in chat. I want you to hold on to that thought, because we'll come back to that in a minute. Now, just to clarify, I will be using the word sex, sexuality, intimate relationships, and romantic partnerships interchangeably, as sex education is more than just the physical acts of intercourse, vaginal, anal, oral, digital, what have you. It's more than pregnancy prevention. It's more than STDs and STI prevention. When it comes to sexuality education programming at your library, you should be taking a holistic approach. Take a look at this diagram. It's also known as the sexuality wheel. If you do a search on the internet, you will find a variety of sexuality wheel diagrams. Sex ed equals sexuality education. And what do we mean when we say sexuality? Sexuality is physical, mental, emotional, and a spiritual journey that spans an individual's entire life. It includes their values, communication skills, self-image, personality, body image, physical expression, sex, gender, socialization. It's the anatomy, a person's body. It's sexual and reproductive health. It's sexual orientation. It's relationships, how a person interacts and cares for other people. It's body image. It's about pleasure. It's also gender identity and expression. And just so that we're all on the same page, let's define gender identity. Gender identity means a person's internal sense of whether they're male or female, both or neither. Gender expression is how a person publicly expresses or presents their gender. This can include behavior, outward appearance, such as dress, hair, makeup, body language, and voice. There's also sexual behavior, what a person does, the physical. Now let's delve into talking about sex in the public library. Why us? Why sex education in the library? What is the role of a librarian or information specialist? Not just when it comes to sex ed, but in whatever we do in the library. Let's also learn about what teens are not learning in school. How many of you thought of the brain when I asked you to name another bodily organ that's involved in sex and sexuality? Teen patrons are giving us access to the biggest sexuality-related organ, and we are obligated to provide them with accurate and unbiased information as librarians. One of the things I've learned as a librarian is to keep a straight face when a teen has the confidence to come up to the librarian's desk and ask a complete stranger a very sensitive question. The American Library Association's core values and strategic directions align with the idea of sex ed literacy in the public library. The American Library Association recognizes the critical need for access to library and information resources, services, and technology by all people. It is your responsibility and my responsibility to give those patrons correct, unbiased information with using the resources at our disposal, using our skill set as librarians to separate the wheat from the chaff of information. Which means when you're providing this information, answering these questions, providing these programs, you have to put your judgment on the shelf. YALSA, the Young Adult Library Service Association's competencies for serving youth, states equity of access, which ensures access to a wide variety of library services, resources, and activities for and with all teens, especially those facing challenges to access. Think about the digital divide. Think about how big the digital divide was exposed during the pandemic when children and teens had to do remote learning. Not even nationwide, statewide. Many teens did not have access to the internet. Many teens did not have access to computers. So if they didn't have access to the internet and they didn't have access to computers at home, and suddenly they are given tools from their school, computers from their school to use to get on the internet, they needed help accessing the information, because this is the first time that they really were able to delve into what the internet could offer them. The American Library's core competencies of librarianship reference and user services, the concepts, principles, and techniques of reference and user services that provide access to relevant and accurate recorded knowledge and information to individuals of all ages and all groups. All ages and all groups. That means it doesn't matter if your patron is a 5-year-old, 15-year-old, 50-year-old, or 105-year-old. We have to make sure they have access to accurate recorded knowledge when they ask for it. And if you're not a young adult specialist, or if you're not a youth services librarian, just remember, no matter how intimidating teens may be, they are patrons too, and they deserve your best. Because of the increase of remote learning, children and teens have more access to the internet and are more socially and culturally isolated than they were before the pandemic. Libraries and librarians need to be the virtual port in the storm for teens. So when they reach out to us, they really need our help. How does the American Library Association's core values and strategic directions align with the idea of sex ed literacy in the public library? Well, when you think about it, Sex ed literacy is the same as any type of literacy, whether it's science literacy in school, reading, math, the fundamental information that students need to go out into the world. Equitable access to information and library services. The American Library Association recognizes the critical need for access to library and information resources, services, technologies by all people, especially those who may experience language or literacy-related barriers, economic distress, cultural or social isolation, physical or attitudinal barriers, racism, discrimination on the basis of appearance, ethnicity, immigrant status, housing status, religious background, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or barriers to equal education, employment, and housing. Let that sit with you for a minute. Let's think about the last 8 to 9 months. What has been revealed to us? The Black Lives Movement uprising has shown us, and when I say us, I mean the royal us, because it didn't show me, I already knew, that racism is built into every system of the United States. That means there is a barrier to equal education, barriers to equal treatment based on race and attitude. There's discrimination on the basis of appearance, ethnicity, immigrant status. Also, what did the pandemic also teach us? There is barriers to equal education because, again, as I mentioned, the digital divide still exists and it's wide. So many students from elementary school through college who had to go home and stay locked in their houses during the pandemic had no access to computers or the internet while they were home. They only had it when they were at school. So an education barrier was created. We are not teaching children how to have sex using their reproductive organs, private parts, genitalia, or whatever you want to call it. We are giving children and teens information to feed their brains about sex and sexuality. New York State schools and schools across the nation are failing at teaching students accurate, complete, and unbiased sex education. Mandated sex education they are failing at. Imagine if you had a child and they were taking a mandated math class and they were learning every single day that 1 + 1 is 3. You would immediately, as a parent, a caregiver, or a librarian, sit that patron down, sit that child down, give them a book and say, that is incorrect. Here is the right answer, how you can find it there. And that's what we should be doing when teens come to us with sex ed related questions. I'm even going to go as far as to say that we shouldn't even be waiting for teens to come to us. We should already be having these programs and resources front and center in our library, along with all the other programs we have. Story times, arts and crafts, gaming, STEM projects, programs for older adults. We should already be tackling this. Nearly 50% of all New York City 8th graders are not taught mandated sex education, which is very scary for me because I have a child in 8th grade right now, and I have a child in 10th grade right now. And from what they've told me, I already know that the information that they received is minimum at best. And that's only because the school district they are in happens to be a good school district. The New York Civil Liberties Union discovered that many of New York State public schools provide inaccurate, incomplete, and biased sex ed. And let's examine biased sex ed. What does that mean? If I believe that everyone should wait until they're married to have sex, I'm going to eliminate subconsciously or consciously anything that might be interpreted as giving the okay to have premarital sex. If I don't believe that trans people exist, I might eliminate subconsciously or consciously their experience from the sex ed or puberty curriculum. That's what bias looks like in sex ed. Also, bias in sex ed could also look like keeping it very heteronormative. Nationally, nearly half of the states in the US have mandated sex ed classes, but only 13 states require sex education be medically accurate. Medically accurate, the basic, it's not even medically accurate. Take a moment to think back when you were 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Whenever you discovered there was sex and what you imagined what sex was. Think about all the things back then that you thought was medically accurate because you heard someone tell you. How about if you douche with Coca-Cola after sex, you don't get pregnant? How about if you jump up and down, you don't get pregnant? That's medically inaccurate. And another 13 states don't have mandated sex education, but they do have mandated HIV education, which means they talk about HIV, but not necessarily in the context of sexuality, which means there's probably a portion of the population who believes that HIV is still only transmitted through blood transfusions and if you happen to be a drug addict that uses needles. There are barriers to equal education in this area. And we are going to be giving them the tools to make the teens informed choices with their lives. And informed choices leads to better outcomes. If you are able to reach just one teenager with good information, they can spread that information to their peers. So instead of them passing along misinformation that begets more misinformation, they are passing on accurate information. So we are not sex educators. We are not teachers. We're not doctors. We're not gynecologists. What can we do as librarians? What can we do as school media specialists? What can we do as library workers? We do what we do best. We showcase library resources. And what are library resources? There are many, but mainly books, our electronic databases, book displays are very important. Create book displays and book lists. Make them super visible. Put them in a place that teens can absolutely see them. Make them up to date. Combine fiction and nonfiction books about sex, reproduction, orientation, and gender. Fiction books helps because it provides stories that some teens are experiencing that nonfiction books might not necessarily be covering. Make them inclusive. Make all your nonfiction books, make all your fiction books inclusive. Teens with disabilities and LGBTQ plus teens also needs equal access to information. Teens with disabilities and teens who are in the LGBTQ plus community have sexuality. And remember what I said before, sexuality is not just about the physical acts of intercourse and sex. It's a whole wheel that includes interaction, relationships, how we feel about our bodies, our values, how we discover our values, boundaries, etc. Now, book displays can be a little bit difficult these days because I'm not sure about your public library, but my public library is not quite open yet for public browsing. So you have to be a little bit creative with your book displays. Perhaps put them in the windows. Take pictures of them, feature them on your library social media account, just so patrons and teen patrons can see that these books are available for them to put on hold and eventually pick up from the library. When you make things visible, you take them out of secrecy. And when you take things out of secrecy, you remove the shame and the embarrassment that might be surrounding them. Book displays also alert patrons to what we have. They don't know what we have until we tell them. And once they know, they'll ask. Resource sheets and flyers. Again, if you're open to the public, offer full or half-page flyers featuring reputable websites or apps for those seeking unbiased information about sex, sexuality, sexual orientation, intimate relationships, reproductive health, etc. Oh, and a tip, reproductive health and sex ed are not exactly the same thing. Reproductive health can fall under sex ed, but sex ed doesn't necessarily fall under reproductive health. Now, again, if your library is closed, but you have grab and go service, you can put these flyers in the grab and go bags or fold them up, put them in the holds of young adult fiction books. It's just an advertisement. You're advertising your services, advertising the information you have. Finally, oh, and if you want to be really fancy, you can create a LibGuide or a shared document on the teen section of your library's website, or if you have a library blog dedicated to teens, you can feature these websites and apps on that page as well. Bookmarks, postcards. Collect, display, and offer bookmarks and fact sheets from places like the Center for Disease Control, the National Institute of Health, your local Department of Health, regional family planning clinics, and LGBTQ support centers.
Rakisha, we lost your audio. Oh, you're back.
Huh?
You're back.
I'm back.
Yeah, you lost your audio for a second.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I accidentally covered up the mic. The majority of the books should not be about the perils of sex, not rape, not just sexual assault, not just pregnancy, and not just STIs and STDs. Inclusive books about sex and orientation and reproduction will cover those topics inside. Fiction books about intimate relationships also have a tendency to be a little bit dramatic and focus on the negative. Use your tools like novelists and find books about relationships that are positive, or at least have a happy ending. But don't use Forever by Judy Blume. Not saying that Forever by Judy Blume is not a good book, but Forever by Judy Blume is almost 50 years old. YA books with teens having sex have come a long way. What else can we do? We can offer workshops that can be self-led, librarian-led, passive, or interactive, or with our community partners. So the pandemic, the lockdown, COVID-19, the age of Rona has completely changed the way we offer programming for our patrons, and also the way we've offered programming for our teens. But this doesn't mean that we cannot offer virtual puberty and sex ed programs. How can you answer teen sex health questions if they're not able to come into the library? You have to think outside the box. Of course, everyone's favorite, virtual workshops via platforms like Zoom, Google Meet, and WebEx. This summer, I offered a pilot program of sex ed and puberty Q&A form at my library using Zoom, in which teens pre-registered, and then they were sent a private Zoom link, and on the day of the program, I answered any questions they submitted. And when I say I answered, I researched the answers and I provided it to them. I just didn't give it to them off the top of my head. If live virtual interaction is not exactly your thing, create on-demand recordings of workshops. Create non-fic book talks recordings of nonfiction books about sex and sex ed and sexuality. Provide consumer health tutorials of the databases that teens can use to find information. Record them and offer them on your YouTube, Vimeo, or Daily Motion channel. Or your Facebook Live, if you use Facebook with your library system. Post infographics on your library's Instagram. Create infographic themed videos on your library's TikTok account. Encourage teens to submit questions via Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok to help provide you with content for your next post. Or even better, do you have teens that need volunteer hours for school? Create a teen virtual volunteer program and help them create content for your social media platforms. Because I guarantee they know TikTok and Instagram way better than any of us. no matter how savvy we think we are. But they're creating the content with your guidance. That means they make it all flashy and teen friendly, and you are funneling accurate information to them using library resources. So they're learning how to get good information. They're posting it on social media, the good information, and they're going to tell their friends the good information. So good information in, good information out. It's win-win for everybody. When you offer workshops and programs at the library, you do not have to be Dr. Ruth. I know I just aged myself because I don't know any other doctor out there who provides sex ed information. Dr. Drew, but that was the 90s. I don't know who it is for the 2000s. Well, whoever it is, you don't have to be that person. Procter & Gamble offers free educated kits that provide a curriculum on how to teach puberty to students in grades 5 through 9. DVDs, demo products, curriculum, and YouTube slides. Organizations like Amazon has everything, but not necessarily sex education playlists. Amaze.org has very helpful YouTube playlists covering every aspect of the sexuality wheel. Also, leave your fact sheets out during teen-oriented programs. Mention that they're available and go on with your program as usual. Or if you're doing virtual programming, pop the link to a shareable doc or to your LibGuide in the chat box of your virtual teen program, and then go on with the program as usual. You can teach yourself how to provide information. Make it a movie afternoon. Just have a day where you're sharing your screen and you're playing these curated playlists by organizations like Planned Parenthood and other family health planning organizations, and let teens have chats in Zoom while the information is playing on the screen. Not a dramatic pause. I was actually thirsty. There are community partnerships out there. You don't have to do this alone. If there's one thing that we all know or have learned as public librarians, we are part of the community and we are stronger when we work together. There are organizations out there like the aforementioned Planned Parenthood, but there are local LGBTQ centers. There are organizations like Day One, and your county or city's health office can provide free workshops on puberty, safe sex, healthy relationships, condom negotiations, virtually and in person. There are even organizations that offer sex ed literacy programs for adults and caregivers. How they should approach the topic of sex ed with their teens. So you can offer programs for them using your community partner, then supplement that with what the library offers, and then they take that information, distill it, and then give it to their teens. So again, good info in, good info out. The parents are taking it to the teens. Teens are now getting supplemented, accurate information that they may not be receiving from schools. Tips, questions, troubleshooting. So this is the part where I give you advice on how to become comfortable offering these types of programs and answering these types of questions. Number one, practice using proper biological terms so the words feel comfortable coming out of your mouth. Even if saying the word penis, as we said earlier, made you laugh or made you nervous, the more you say it, the more you can control your expression so no one can see that you're nervous, no one can see you laugh while you are secretly laughing or nervous on the inside. When you have programs where teens are asking questions or they come to the desk and you're providing a reference interview, resist the urge to correct teens when they use slang. Let them express themselves in the way that they know how, but you respond to their questions using the proper terminology. That way, they can equate the slang with the proper term, so when they see it or encounter it later on, they'll know what it means. Remember to use inclusive and up-to-date terminology. There are many resources from like the Human Rights Campaign that will tell you all the different up-to-date terminology, which includes pronoun usage and using non-gendered language. Now, you might be asking yourself, if you personally are offering a workshop on sex, on reproductive organs, how can you avoid making it gendered? Well, first of all, don't refer to them as male or female reproductive organs. Besides being vague, we're no longer living in a binary world. Call it what it is. Penis, testes, vas deferens. Vagina, clitoris, fallopian tubes. Those are the proper names, but I did not assign any gender to it. Respect your teen's privacy. If your teen comes up to you at a program, virtually or physically, and asks for information on a topic, provide that information, but respect the teen's privacy. Try not to lecture them if they're asking a book about how to have sex for the first time, or what do you do if you're pregnant, et cetera, et cetera. Don't share that information with anyone else, as it may be a sensitive topic. Even though it might make for good fodder in the workroom, you never know. Be mindful of your community standards and prepare for blowback. If your library is in a conservative neighborhood, they may not appreciate you offering programs or book displays or bulletin board displays or even information on a website that has anything to do with sex and sexuality. But keep this in mind. You are not only catering to those people in the community, you are catering to the whole community. So you have to take into account the people who are underrepresented on the shelves or in the community. Because even if the community is 1,000%, 1,000 people in the community are against premarital sex, I guarantee there are at least 2 people that might be having sex. So just remember that. And you can always remind your patrons that they don't have to attend the programs you offer. And also, you might also want to emotionally prepare for blowback. And I'll give an example. At my library, we had an LGBTQ display for Pride Month, And we kept it up way past Pride Month because we're troublemakers like that. And people started leaving Post-it notes and handwritten notes on the bulletin board that said that we were going to burn in hell because we had these positive display about gay people. And this is in Brooklyn, New York, which is supposed to be liberal. Have a sense of humor. You're going to make a mistake. You got to allow yourself to laugh. And when you laugh, teens will laugh. They'll either laugh at you or laugh with you. Doesn't matter. Everyone is relaxed when they're laughing. If red flags come up during your reference interview or when you're doing your programs, resist the urge to react immediately. Take note of the situation and contact your supervisor, library social worker, or safety officer, and follow the protocols that your library has. I know some librarians are required reporters, some are not. So if during a program, someone says they're being abused or have been raped or what have you, follow the proper protocols, make sure that that patron gets the help that they need. So now it's time for questions, and I'm going to take off my screen share so I can now see everyone's lovely faces.
I'm coming back. Give me 1 second. Hello. So we have a lot of questions in the chat here.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I want to sit down.
So our first question is from Joanne from the Queen's Library. And you talked about this a little bit, but have you ever received direct pushback from a parent or guardian? And if so, how did you communicate with that parent or guardian?
The answer is yes. And it was an email. Oh, actually, I take it back. We got an email and a phone call. And luckily, I have a very supportive supervisor, and they created a form letter that said we serve 1.1. I'm sorry, the population of Brooklyn's 2 million. We serve 2 million patrons. Not our programs are not for everyone. And this program is for people who want to attend, and no one is forced to attend it. Very simple like that. But my branch at the Brooklyn Public Library is in a more liberal area of Brooklyn. So I can't speak for the branches that are in the more conservative neighborhoods.
Thank you. So you also talked about this a little bit, but Alyssa from the Onondaga Free Library asks, do you have any resource sheets or flyers that you can share?
I do. I have a bibliography I created. And I also have a folder of PDFs from the different, with resources of different classes that I have taken. And if you email me, I forgot to show my final sheet with my contact information. If you email me, I can forward it to you, all the info that I have.
Perfect. Our next question also kind of touches upon that training that you just mentioned. So Emily from the Pearl River Public Library asks, what kind of training can you take as youth service librarians so they can educate themselves?
Okay, so the Planned Parenthood has a lot of workshops, and now a lot of them are virtual. Some of them are free, some of them you have to pay for, but they're cheap. They're $15. So like over the summer, I took a course about like sex in the digital age, about sexting, because of the amount of kids who are now in long distance relationships because of the pandemic. Also, the Center for Sex Education in New Jersey, they offer workshops. Some are free and some are paid. and they're $25 or less. There are also, I want to get the name correctly. I only remember the acronym because, you know, librarians love acronyms. The Institute for Sexuality Educators, I think it's ISSE, also has pre-recorded videos on their website and their YouTube channel. And they also have paid courses that you can take. And they're in the, depending on the module you take, can be anywhere from like $100 to $300 because it's a asynchronous learning, but at the end of it, you get credit. So if your state offers certification as a sexuality educator, you'll be able to eventually use those credits to become a certified sex educator.
Thank you. Just in general, a lot of people have said that you're a very powerful speaker and presenter, and that you've been very helpful. And before I go to the next question, just so everyone knows, if you have any more questions, make sure to put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand to ask them live. You click on participants, and then you'll see a little button that says raise hand, and I will unmute you. So our next question here is also from Emily. So what organizations would you recommend to get into their libraries to work on these programs, or any organizations that you've had experiences with?
I work a lot with Planned Parenthood. And again, depending on your community, Planned Parenthood might be associated with abortions. So if you just want to avoid that political or social minefield, there are family planning clinics or women's health clinics. There are in New York, in New York City, there's the LGBT Center, and they have a educator who does presentations about sex and sexuality for gay teens. Also, PFLAG, the parents and friends of lesbians and gays, but everyone under the rainbow flag. But when they started, it was just 2 letters. They're a very great resource. They actually worked with me this summer, and they did a program about explaining the gender spectrum to adults and teens who had questions about it. So those type of support organizations can help. Even like any type of community doctor, any doctors in the community that might, or nurse practitioners can come and speak.
Just some general comments that I thought you should know about. So Anna from Central New York Library Resources Council said that you're an inspiration. And then Amy from Troy Public Library also said, Rakisha, thank you so much for your great presentation. So glad we, YSS, were able to have you with us to share your amazing educational presentation. I don't have any more questions as of right now, but I actually have a question I think would be helpful too. What are some books that you could recommend to have in your library?
Sure, I will show them.
Oh, perfect.
This book is called Sex Ed is in Session, and it's by a sex educator nurse. And basically, it's more about how you can open the lines of communication with young people about life's tough topics. So parents and educators can read it. And so it not only talks about how to make it easier to talk about sex, but talk about all of life's tough topics. So it's a way to make yourselves more comfortable. And also, if you're an educator or a librarian, it also gives you tips on how you can present to scared parents about why sexuality education is important. Then there's Teaching Safer Sex. This is the abridged edition. And this has 10 lesson plans about teaching safer sex, and it's offered by the Center of Sex Education. They have a whole library of books that you can buy. They're very expensive because they're textbook prices, so your mileage may vary. Also, there's some really great books in your juvenile and young adult section. This is one of my favorites. It's called Bunk Nine's Guide to Growing Up. Secrets, tips, and expert advice on the good, the bad, and the awkward. There's also, let's see. Those are the books that I have off the top of my head that I've been using recently.
Awesome, thank you. We did have another question come in. So Genevieve from Buffalo and Erie County Public Library asks, do you use any curriculums like 3rs.org, or do you just do community and self-created programs?
Meaning how I teach it or how I learn it?
Genevieve, can you clarify? I'm just looking in the chat here. How you teach it. Thank you.
Well, as the rappers like to say, straight off the top of the dome. No curriculum. I kind of wing it. And I also kind of just lean into the direction that the teens take me into. The first time I did it, it started off very, straightforward, and then the questions just kind of led the discussion to where it needed to go. And that we ended up talking about sexual harassment, how boys can be victims of sexual harassment as well. We talked about things like mutual pleasure. And then we talked about things about how porn, the sex that you see in pornography is, it does not equal the type of sex that will be happening in real life. At least not if you're 13 years old asking me. God, I hope not. Hope not. And then they asked me what middle school my daughter went to, and I said, none of your business.
Oh, we have another question. So Julia from Baldwinsville Public Library asks, how do you engage YA young adult demographic in the time of Zoom and remote learning?
Very difficultly. It's very difficult. It was a little bit more successful in the summertime because we had a lot of teen volunteers who worked with us virtually, but basically the same way that I interacted with them during the school year. I email the heck out of schools. I call schools. I give presentations, let them know that these things are available. Make sure that they're up on all our social media. I pressure my children to share with their friends.
Thank you. So this is our last question before we close out. So Genevieve from Buffalo and Erie County, you mentioned pornography. What resources do you recommend to educate teens on that topic?
Okay, so I mentioned the organization amaze.org. They have, if you go to their YouTube channel, they have several videos, informational videos about pornography. And also there are some books out there about like the pornification of society. I think that's in the title. That's more for you to read. Also, I tend to read a lot of kind of like sex positive and feminist memoirs and nonfiction books. So it talks about that. And I forgot the young, no, she's not young, but the woman who has a book, I think it's called Boys and Sex. And she was the one who wrote the seminal book about teen bullying between girls, the relational bullying. I forgot her name right now, but if you look up relational bullying, her name will come up. I think My Daughter Is Not Cinderella, something like that.
We do, okay. We do have two more questions that I will actually because they're good questions. So Catherine from Chile Public Library asks, how do you make Zooms private? We want to do a Gay Alliance program, but we want to be secret so teens feel safe.
Well, one, don't post it on your public website, and you just require people to register. So when you get their email address, you email them the link directly with a password. So even if the link goes out, there's no password. Also, you might want to use coded language in your email, or when you're advertising it, depending on your community. So, we know when we use the words inclusive and welcoming, we all know what that means. It might just mean everyone is welcome, but it also means welcome. Or like when we use the word diversity, it might mean everybody, but it also means, come on, Black people, this is for you too.
Thank you. And then our last question is from Julia from Baldwinsville Public Library. How about a sex ed program for adults? Have you ever done any of those?
Mostly kind of like, not necessary, but mostly how to open the lines of communication on how to talk to their teens about sex. And I've had actually some parents just in the past week who are interested, kind of like what I would call like a mom and me sex ed class for like children who are like around 9 or 10, and like that everyone is together, learning together. So I'm kind of working on that, and she's getting some other parents and tweens involved. So that's when you have a very involved community that's excited. So, but actually, at my library, 2 other librarians, they did start a program before the pandemic, kind of like a dating and sex program for seniors, for 50 plus, for those who are returning to dating and sex after, widowhood or divorce, etc. So like the third life, third chapter of life in dating. So it can happen. It's not my area of expertise.
Got it. Well, thank you so much, Rakisha. This was an amazing talk. Everyone has loved everything that you've said. If you go to the sessions, you can read all their comments. I definitely think you should. And for everyone still listening, just as a reminder, this was recorded. It'll be available at a later date for you to review it. You do get CE credit. And I also popped in Rakisha's email in the Feedloop chat, so feel free to reach out to her. And thank you so much for attending.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great conference. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.